Hey friends, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another video in my series Quarter Life Crisis and Wine. But today I'm sadly out of wine, so I'm drinking some cider I happen to have, and it's actually really nice. But today I'm going to be talking about living alone. So I've actually lived in quite a few scenarios, like roommate scenarios. My first 2 years of college, I lived in the traditional dorms with a roommate, and that's pretty enclosed space sharing a room. And then junior and senior year, I was an RA, so I had my own room, but I was constantly interacting with the girls on my floor, being their mentor, but I had my own space and I shared a communal bathroom. Right out of college, I moved into a 2-bedroom with a roommate, and we each had our own bedroom obviously, but we shared a bathroom, living room, kitchen. And then now for the past 9 months or so, I've lived in this studio apartment. So I'm completely on my own, and so I have a good sense of all the different living scenarios, and I've compiled a list of the pros and cons of living alone. And I hope this video is helpful for you if you're trying to figure out if you want to live alone, or if you want to have a roommate, or if you're just curious about my experience. So let's get into it. I'm probably gonna bounce back and forth between pros and cons depending on what I want to talk about, but the first thing I wanted to talk about that is the biggest one for me is that I feel really energized and revived by having alone time. I realize that it's very important to me. So obviously in a studio, you're alone the majority of the time. So if you love being alone and you're really energized by it, it's awesome. But on the downside, a con is that it's also really easy to get stuck in a rut of being antisocial. If you're really craving a weekend, like a Saturday, to just be by yourself, watch Netflix, that's totally fine, and I do that sometimes. But I think it's very important to make an effort to be social, because everyone needs to be social. Everyone needs to feel connected to another person. Even if you're an introvert, you need to have those human interactions and that connection to build your relationships and feel like you're part of a community. So even if you live alone, it's really important to have social time, and it's just a little bit more difficult. Not necessarily difficult, but you just have to make more of an effort to be social. I have to make plans to see someone. It's not like I'm going to see my roommate at the end of the day and have that communication and that human interaction. You really have to go out of your way to create those moments. So if you're willing to do that, then living alone is great, but you just have to make sure of that because you don't want to get stuck in a funk. Another big benefit for me is that I have total control over my space. I have control over how I decorate it, how clean it is, what I'm watching on TV. You have total control over everything, which is awesome. Speaking of total control, you never have to wait for someone who's in the shower. Like, I've shared a bathroom with someone for my entire life up until now, and it's so nice that whenever I want to hop in the shower, I can. I don't have to coordinate with anybody. Also, if you want to have friends or significant other over, you don't have to consult with anybody. You have total control, like I've said. And for me personally, I can film my YouTube videos whenever the heck I want. I don't have to wait for someone to be out of the house for it to be quiet, or for me to use the living room or the kitchen. Like, I can do whatever I want. It's totally my space. The biggest downside that I could think of is that living with a roommate is generally less expensive. It starts with the rent. So generally renting a 2-bedroom unit is per person less expensive than renting a 1-bedroom unit, especially if you compare in the same building, for example. Obviously, this varies based off where you live, the unit, etc. For me personally, actually, I spend less living on my own because at my older apartment, the amenities were a lot nicer. I had a nicer kitchen, I had a nicer building, and now it's not that nice, the place I currently live in, and I also live in a different city. So there's a lot of variables, obviously, but generally if you compare like 2 units in the same building, living on a 1-bedroom unit by yourself is more expensive than splitting a 2-bedroom. Also, you have to take utilities into account. My Wi-Fi costs exactly the same as it did when I lived with my roommate, but now I obviously have to cover the entire bill myself. Another downside is that sometimes it's creepy. If you're a wimp like me and you get easily scared by scary movies or something like that, or you believe in ghosts or anything, it can be a little creepy sometimes. Also, my electricity on this entire block went out a couple weeks ago, and I was all by myself. So I lit all my candles, running around like crazy, and just kind of hung out by myself. So in that moment, it would have been more fun to have a roommate to kind of freak out with, but that's kind of a not a very common thing. Another thing that happened to me recently, I've been kind of having some bad luck, is that I got locked out of my apartment for the first time ever. This has never happened to me, even in college, and I just locked the door behind me without getting my keys or making sure I had my keys in my purse, which I always do. But anyways, in a situation where you have a roommate, you would just call them and say, hey, can I come pick up your keys wherever you are? Or maybe they'd be in the apartment. But in my case, I had to call a locksmith. I spent 90 bucks. I was really mad at myself. Again, that's not that common, but it's just something to consider. Now, the last benefit of living on your own actually comes from my boyfriend, because I asked him what the biggest benefit he has found living alone, because he lives alone. And he said that you can walk around naked whenever you want. So I personally don't really do that, but if you're interested in that, definitely live alone, because I could see the appeal in that. I obviously cannot make this decision for you. I've listed out a lot of benefits and disadvantages, but you really have to go with what you think is the best for you. But I do have some tips. First of all, if you're in college, I would highly recommend having a roommate. It's really the only time of your life that you are really living that college lifestyle, especially if you live in the dorms. Have a roommate. You know, it's only 4 years of your life. Enjoy it. It's a weird living situation, so just embrace it. There will be a lot of funny stories that come out of it. So if you're in college, definitely live with a roommate. The other tip I would have is that if you are new to a city, I would highly recommend that you have a roommate. It's a built-in friend, it's an instant connection, and then you can meet other people through that person, or at the very least, when you come home from work, you're not gonna feel lonely. I would do this if I was moving to a brand new city, if I didn't know anybody there, and I think it just is a very smart decision. And also, if they've lived there before, they could kind of show you the ropes of your new city, and I just think it is the way to go. Then in a couple years, when you get the lay of the land a little better, then you can move on your own. But I would highly recommend you live with a roommate if you are new to a city. Overall, I'm really happy that I live alone at this stage in my life. I'm glad I've had all the variety of different living scenarios, and I love living alone. However, in my next apartment, I think I'm gonna have a roommate, especially if I move to a new city, like I said. I'll definitely try to find a roommate, just again for a change, but like I said, only you know the answer to the question whether you should live alone or not, and I hope these tips and my experience gave you some insight. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Again, I would really appreciate it if you hit subscribe down below, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!